In the quiet village of Shikaru, whispers of unspeakable massacres spread through the night. Legends tell of the Shingwai, creatures that prey on humans, leaving only fear behind. But one lonely boy crosses paths with something beyond his understanding. And from that moment on, his life will never be the same. A hopeless girl is cornered against a fence, crying in despair. She whispers, "Stay back," as a monster approaches, dragging a lifeless corpse, its disturbing gaze fixed on her. It leans closer and disturbingly compliments her on how beautiful her head is. The scene shifts to the beautiful village of Shikaru, nestled deep in the mountains. Within its quiet corners, rumors of a vicious massacre spread, likely the work of a Shingwai. Shingwai, ancient creatures of terror, feared since old times. Monsters that kidnap and devour humans. Their existence defies logic itself. Kou, our protagonist, visits the small shop of an old lady who seems fond of him. She remarks how long it's been since she last saw him. He smiles faintly, greets her warmly, and as usual hands her herbs and vegetables. As the woman is about to give him some stew as a tip, chaos erupts. A frantic girl crashes violently into him, begging the old lady for the number of a Shingwai hunter. She's trembling, terrified, describing the brutality of a massacre in the neighboring town. "We must find someone to hunt it," she pleads. She shyly hides her face, muttering that she's even too afraid to go to the toilet alone. Once she calms down, she notices the boy and wonders who he is. The granny tells her to settle down. The old woman reassures the girl, reminding her how far away the other village is. Then she gently turns to Kou, urging him to consider moving into the village. Living alone in the woods, she says, is too dangerous. He dismisses her concern, claiming he loves the solitude and insists it's safe. Accepting the stew, he heads out. As soon as he leaves, the girl blurts out that he's a weirdo for living in the woods. The merchant, however, explains his story, how his irresponsible father abandoned him there, and how his harsh childhood made it impossible for him to trust others. Meanwhile, the boy smiles quietly to himself. The villagers might see him as unfortunate, but he feels otherwise. He isn't alone. When he reaches his home, he calls out for someone named Chiyou, wondering where she's gone. Suddenly, with incredible speed, a masked woman seizes him. They playfully argue over who won the surprise attack before she welcomes him back. He smiles gratefully. The villagers think he's alone, but the truth is, he lives with one of the Shingwai they fear so much. The scene flashes back to a cold, dark night. He is still a small boy, left all alone and weak in front of an abandoned house. His luck changes when a striking woman in a bizarre mask approaches. Surprised to find a child abandoned like this, she bombards him with questions. When he explains his father left him, she squeezes him tightly, marveling at the tenderness of human offspring. Excitedly, she showers him with questions, how long he's been waiting, whether he'll keep waiting. When he confirms, she calls his patience loyal and honorable, but quickly adds that such traits mean nothing to a Shingwai. What she values is chaos, defiance, violence, and evil. Nervously, the boy asks if she's truly a Shingwai. Then, out of nowhere, she hugs him tightly. At first he fears she'll eat him, but she teases that she's only in the mood for a nap. Slowly, he begins to feel her warmth, easing into the bond as they exchange names. From that day on, Chiyou takes care of him as though he were her own child, feeding him, teaching him to read and write, reminding him to strengthen his mind. In another moment, she nearly drowns and hilariously pleads for him to save her. Drenched afterward, he suddenly asks why she cares for him. Was it because she actually cared? The masked woman playfully jabs him with her hat, calling the question far too intimate. Yet she admits his assumption may not be wrong, though he's not useful to her, she simply wanted his company. Even Shingwai, she confesses, can feel lonely. By the river, he fishes while she lounges nearby. He brings up the Shingwai attack in a neighboring village. She dismisses it, calling the creature foolish for drawing so much attention. If it came here, she says, she'd simply run away, she's too tired to fight. He mocks her, calling her pathetic. Angrily, she reminds him of her might in the past, but he teases her about almost drowning not long ago. Curious, he asks what kind of Xingguai she is and about her life before. Chiyou avoids the question, saying it's nap time. Her past doesn't matter, she's content now. But he thinks to himself, there's so much he doesn't know. She never eats. She never removes her mask. Driven by curiosity, he asks if she won't touch her stew. Puzzled, she reminds him she doesn't eat. He pushes further, suggesting she just doesn't want to remove her mask. Annoyed, she tells him good night and lays her head on his lap. Unable to resist, he reaches for her mask. Before he can lift it, she strikes his hand. At that exact moment, he catches a fish, leaving him stunned, her on top of him, the fish flopping on his head. She calls him a wicked child. He tries to explain, he only wanted to see her face, to smile together, maybe even share a meal. Annoyed, she snaps at him to empty the pot himself. Later, he sits alone eating stew, reflecting that he's never seen her eat, age, or even smile. Maybe it's simply part of her being a Xingguai. He accepts it. On his way back to return the granny's pot, he notices families happily eating together. His heart aches. He wonders why she hides her face. The old woman greets him cheerfully, remarking how quickly he returned the pot. He thanks her for the stew, but his gaze lingers on a mother with her child. His heart aches again, he wishes one day he and Chiyou could smile together. Still, he reminds himself to be grateful, not greedy. Suddenly, the frightened girl from earlier bursts in, screaming that she saw something, an eerie creature with human heads around its neck, grinning at her with a horrific smile. His heart sinks. Chiyou is alone. Without hesitation, he runs into the woods, desperate to find her. Then it appears. A towering monster, wearing human heads as a necklace, the same Xingguai the girl described. He finds her beaten and on the ground. Rushing to her side, he demands to know what happened. The Xingguai laughs, taunting that Chiyou is his to play with. The boy shouts defiantly that she's his family. The monster pauses, confused. Family? It sneers. No, you must be her thrall. And she hasn't possessed you yet, has she? He stammers in confusion. Thrall? What does that mean? The Xingguai mocks her for keeping secrets and lunges to attack. With one swing, the creature knocks her mask flying. It cackles, calling her ugly, mocking how she deceived the boy. He stares, horrified, she has no face. The monster explains with glee, she is the fallen god of war, stripped of her body, doomed to wander in misery. She seeks a vessel, the boy himself. Trembling, he asks if it's true. The Xingguai sneers that Chiyou only wants to use him to regain her body. He struggles to believe it, but deep down, he knows her heart. Suddenly, the beast attacks again. The boy reacts, throwing dirt in its eyes. Blinded for a moment, he seizes her and flees. But pulls away saying she must return. He begs her to stop, she's too weak. At the riverbank, she grips his wrist. His hand passes through her chest, empty, hollow. With a trembling voice, she admits the truth. Long ago, she lost a battle. Her victors stripped her of everything, her body, her face, her ability to eat or fight. She confesses that at first, yes, she intended to use him as a vessel. But over time, he became too precious. She could never take him. She declares they must part, she needs to fight the monster and reclaim what's hers. One of the faces it carries belongs to her. Instead of fear, he smiles. So if we beat it, I'll finally see your face? She is stunned. His excitement leaves her puzzled. He insists, she should use him. If she does, she'll regain her strength. She refuses, if she uses him, he may vanish forever. Why would he sacrifice himself? The boy answers simply, on the day they met, she saved him. Now, it's his turn to save her. Tears in her voice, she admits there is one way. He may lose his place among mortals, but his body will remain intact. He agrees without hesitation. She begins chanting. Symbols ignite on his hands. The monster, sensing something, approaches. Then, he appears before it, eyes glowing, aura blazing. The Xingguai shrieks in terror. He's possessed. With one decisive leap, the boy swings his blade. The monster's head flies. The next morning, he awakens in shallow water. A fish nibbles at his hair. He jolts upright, remembering the battle, staring at the marks on his hand. Fear grips him. What happened to her? Then he sees her, standing before him with her head bowed. Slowly, she raises her face. His eyes widen. For the first time, he beholds her true form, her beauty angelic, breathtaking. They share a warm embrace. She teases him, asking if her beauty blinded him. He laughs, saying she was only standing in front of the sun. But then she admits, reclaiming what she lost will be difficult. He smiles. With him at her side, it will be easier. And with joy in his heart, he vows to join her on her journey. Chapter 2 opens with Chiyou celebrating her recovered face. She admires her restored beauty, experimenting with every expression imaginable, from joy and anger to grief and delight, while boasting of her own magnificence. Kou, unimpressed by her theatrics, offers only a sarcastic clap. The Xingguai then addresses the protagonist, explaining that with her face back, she can now cast a rare spell to transform into a terrifying beast capable of blending into a crowd. Kou notes her unusually high energy as she excitedly jumps around, feeling overwhelmed by her insistence that he witness her trick. With a burst of smoke, she transforms. As the smoke clears, Kou is astonished, but not by fear. He finds her new form, a small owl with long legs, unbearably cute, and asks if she had turned into a mushroom. Disappointed and furious, Chiyou loudly declares she is a ferocious owl. The main character is simply glad that she is happy, even as she pecks him with her beak. He thinks to himself how eager he is to recover the rest of her body. The scene shifts to the pair traveling along the river on a slow boat. Kou questions whether the vessel will ever reach its destination, but Chiyou urges him to be patient and enjoy the scenery. She explains they are headed to a bookstore in a nearby town to meet an acquaintance who might have information about her scattered body parts. Kou, surprised she even had acquaintances, murmurs that traveling by road would have been faster, adding shyly that he is uncomfortable when strangers are around. At that moment, the captain of the boat greets him. The old man remarks on the cuteness of Kou's little companion, mistakenly assuming she is a talking parrot. Chiyou struggles to maintain her disguise, forcing out loud owl sounds to avoid suspicion. Soon after, the boatman announces they must stop, the fog is thickening too quickly. He explains that the once scenic river is now feared, mentioning unsettling stories of people witnessing giants. As he prepares to drop them off, Chiyou insists they continue, boldly claiming that Kou will pay him triple the fare. Kou is stunned by her reckless claim. He seizes her wing in disbelief, demanding to know why she would endanger them and calling her crazy mushroom. The owl only grins wickedly, reminding him that he will be the one paying, since she knows how much money he had earned from the stew lady. She hops around with unrestrained energy, determined to press forward for the sake of the scenery. Kou, completely perplexed, can't understand her obsession with the scenery. He reminds her of the entire point of their trip, which was not to sightsee but to reclaim her missing body parts. With sorrowful eyes, the Xingguai finally confesses the painful truth: it's been 5,000 years since she has had eyes to see anything. Kou is deeply touched, understanding the profound motive behind her insistence. Chiyou breaks the tension with a serious note, declaring that the quest is not a simple race that a novice like him can charge through, advising him to look around and lift his eyes off the ground. Suddenly, a massive Xingguai serpent surges from beneath the water, rocking the boat violently. Chiyou identifies the beast, explaining it came to feed on tourists and never left, becoming the source of the persistent fog. She tries to communicate with the creature, but it lunges at her. Trembling in fear, she condemns the lesser creature for daring to ruin her sightseeing trip. The serpent then snaps at Chiyou, lifting her high in its jaws, ready to swallow her whole. Terrified, Kou freezes. From the monster's grip, Chiyou cries out, urging him to use the power she granted him the day before. Frustrated, Kou shouts back, questioning how he could possibly cut through something so enormous. Chiyou reminds him of the mark on his wrist, which grants him access to her divine power, the ability to wield her arcane weapons with the might of a god. Guided by her words, Kou reaches out and summons a mighty sword. The owl shouts desperately that he can totally kill the snake and urges him to save her. Kou gathers his strength, and with a powerful strike, he hurls the sword deep into the serpent's neck. Chiyou leaps onto his shoulder, saved and relieved. Kou reassures his companion of his strength, and with newfound speed and agility, he leaps toward the beast. The serpent is unable to react as Kou drives the blade deeper into its neck, and with a final, powerful surge of divine power, he slices clean through it. The massive head of the serpent falls into the river. The boatman, who had fainted, regains consciousness and watches in awe as the fog finally dissipates and sunlight streams down upon the river. The old man urges the young hero to look at the scenery, the clear skies and bright sun, as people begin gathering along the shore to thank him. Kou, whose trust issues are immediately triggered, insists he wants to leave. But the old man insists that the grateful townspeople should at least be allowed to thank him. Kou, sweating nervously, admits he isn't good with crowds. The old man reassures him, urging him to simply let them see him. As the boat reaches shore, Kou lowers his head, overcome by anxiety. But then, someone gently takes his hand. An old woman, smiling through her tears, welcomes him, followed by many other joyful, grateful faces. Kou stands in awe, hearing their heartfelt thanks. Chiyou explains that thanks to him, she is finally able to see this breathtaking scenery, which is more beautiful than she ever imagined. Kou responds with true sincerity, admitting he saw smiling faces and scenery he had never seen before. He acknowledges that she was right, and that he is still just a novice with much to learn. With a bright, genuine smile, the protagonist declares a powerful conclusion: the day had been a revelation, showing him not just the beauty of the world, but the immense potential he possessed to accomplish so much more for her. Chiyou, satisfied, reminds him it's time to move on and continue their quest. Kou and Chiyou finally reached the ancient town of Tianrue. The streets looked abandoned, yet a sudden horde of donkeys swarmed toward them. One tugged on Kou's sleeve, chewing on the fabric. Startled, he looked around and realized they were surrounded. Donkeys filled the streets in every direction. When he turned, he was horrified to see Chiyou, still in her small elf form, being mobbed by the herd. They tried to bite and peck at her feathers. Kou lunged forward, yanking her out of their mouths, and bolted as the herd gave chase. Chiyou frantically flapped a wing, pointing toward a shop ahead. They dashed inside, slamming the door behind them. Kou panted in disbelief, muttering that the town was bizarre. The strange scent clinging to Chiyou didn't help his unease. Inside, silence greeted them. The shop was lined with shelves stacked with old books and relics. Kou brushed his hand over the dust, remarking on the ancient look of everything. The place seemed deserted. He guessed the workers must have gone out for lunch. But Chiyou frowned. It was odd, she thought. Why would anyone leave without locking the doors? Kou's eyes wandered. A photograph caught his attention, a family photo. He lingered on it for a moment, the image stirring unease and curiosity, before Chiyou interrupted, unimpressed, calling the place disappointing. With a shrug, they stepped back outside. Sitting on a bench, they wondered aloud where her acquaintance might be. Chiyou admitted she'd only met him a handful of times, and the last meeting had been decades ago. She sighed, her voice unusually soft. The whole town felt strange. Kou nodded in agreement, baffled by the endless donkeys. How could there be so many animals and no people at all? Where had they come from? Their answer seemed to appear at the city gates. 2 donkeys dragging a cart rolled in, led by a cheerful woman. She greeted them warmly, surprised to see anyone still in the town. She explained that people whispered of a curse, every single inhabitant had mysteriously vanished. Her group had only stopped here on their way to the next town. At Kou's side, Chiyou watched carefully, while Kou's eyes fixed on the girl traveling with her. He recognized her, she was the child from the family photo he'd seen in the shop. When he asked, the woman confirmed they were merchants. With a bright smile, the merchant declared it was Kou's lucky day. She offered him a donkey meat burger, claiming it was the plank bridge inn's finest fare. It was leftover stock, she explained, and she hated wasting food. Kou hesitated, but her words were persuasive. Just as he was about to take a bite, the little girl suddenly slapped it out of his hands. Shocked, Kou looked to her for answers. The merchant's cheerful face twisted into fury. Her voice lashed like a whip as she berated the girl, who bowed her head, trembling and begging for forgiveness. Kou, stunned, tried to intervene, but the woman seized a stick and struck the child mercilessly. Blow after blow fell, until she raised her arm again to strike harder. This time, Kou caught her wrist. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Behind her pleasant facade, he saw it, something dark, twisted, and cruel. Then, just as quickly, she snapped back into her smiling merchant act, apologizing sweetly and offering to make him another burger. She vanished toward her cart, leaving Kou uneasy. He tried to brush it off, picking the burger up from the ground, saying it was still edible. But a wave of drowsiness crept over him, heavy and unnatural. The girl edged closer, whispering her thanks for standing up for her. Kou's eyes lingered on her. Something about her felt familiar. Before he could ask, a shadow fell across him, the merchant returned, watching with predatory intent. To shield the girl, he quickly changed the subject, asking if she helped with the family business. She nodded fearfully, grateful just to assist. Kou then asked why the town was so empty. But before she could answer, movement flickered behind him, a cleaver swung down, aimed at his head. At the last second, Chiyou intercepted. She mocked the woman coldly, revealing Kou as her vessel and sneering that the burger she had prepared would be her last. The merchant hissed in shock, recognizing her true identity, the goddess of war, bound to a human boy. Kou didn't hesitate. He struck fast, landing a blow that forced the woman back. Her disguise fell away, revealing her monstrous self, a Xingwai woman wielding twisted powers, known as the Third Lady of Plank Bridge. Chiyou quickly explained the truth. She had heard the story long ago, of a Xingwai who disguised herself as a kind merchant, traveling with a cart, serving donkey meat burgers, and turning unsuspecting humans into donkeys. The realization crashed down on Kou. His heart sank as he finally understood. The donkeys, they weren't animals at all. They were the townspeople, cursed and trapped in pitiful forms. Cold sweat ran down his neck as the horror of it set in. He grabbed the little girl's arm, urging her to come with them, but she resisted. Tears welled in her eyes as the Xingwai turned toward her parents, now mindless donkeys. With a brutal swing, she struck one down. The girl crumbled, running forward, begging, promising never to run away again. But the monster ignored her cries, raising her cleaver to end it. Steel clashed in an instant. Kou's blade met hers, sparks bursting as he pushed her back. The Xingwai staggered, startled by his sudden strength. Kou glanced down at the girl, managing a faint smile to reassure her. From his shoulder, Chiyou emerged in her elf form, her tone urgent. She revealed the truth, her acquaintance had been transformed into a donkey, and the only way to break the curse was to slay the Xingwai. Kou's eyes burned with fury. He clenched his sword, declaring his intent. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear. His anger and resolve pushed him forward. He thought of the girl, of her helplessness, and of his own past, the pain of watching loved ones suffer, powerless to save them. Nothing was more torturous than that. With fire in his chest, he tightened his grip. His sword gleamed in the dim light as he stepped forward. The battle had only just begun. The chapter begins with a flashback. A young girl is reading from a text and stumbles upon a terrifying description. It reveals that a Xingwai named Banqiao San Yangzi turns people into donkeys. One day, she finds her townspeople crowded around a new merchant's cart, all raving about the delicious Xiaobing burgers. As she gets closer, she recognizes the merchant as the very same Xingguai. She urgently begs everyone to stop eating, warning them they will all turn into donkeys. But the Xingguai is steps ahead, calmly and confidently manipulating the situation. She dismisses the girl's claims as absurd and boasts about how delicious her food is. The scene then shifts back to the present. As Kou battles the Xingguai, her spell weakens. The girl watches in shock as her parents, in donkey form, begin to change. Kou urgently shouts for the girl to get away while she still can. Chiyou, in her elf form, emerges from Kou's shoulder. With her eyes locked on the Xingguai, she informs Kou that to find her body, they must break the spell first, and she orders him to take the Xingguai down. Kou, gripping his sword, confidently agrees. He vows to change everyone back, including Chiyou's friend. The Xingguai, hearing the name Chiyou, grins in disbelief. She finds it impossible to believe that Chiyou would ever ally herself with a human. As Kou approaches to strike, the Xingguai shouts with an evil smile, taunting him that killing her won't break the spell. Hearing this, Kou freezes for a critical moment. The vicious Xingguai exploits this opening, striking his sword and sending it flying. Now unarmed, Kou backs down and tries to retrieve his weapon, but it's stuck fast in the wooden cart. Suddenly, a charging donkey headbutts Kou. As he stands up, clueless, he sees a whole herd of donkeys charging right at him. His eyes widen as he sees the Xingguai swinging her whip like a magic stick, aiming the herd directly at him. Frustrated by her endless tricks, Kou listens as Chiyou explains that this is part of the Xingguai's power, and she is forcing the donkeys to act against their will. With an evil smile, the Xingguai shouts that Kou cannot make her reverse the spell, declaring the donkeys her loyal minions. She whips the hopeless creatures, driving them into a frenzy. Their eyes turn white, veins pop on their bodies, and blood drips from their noses. She orders them to charge, proclaiming that Kou will be trampled to death. As the herd advances, Kou thinks to himself. He knows he can't harm the donkeys. He needs to find a way to slip past them, reach the Xingguai, and force her to lift the spell. But he isn't sure how. The Xingguai's triumphant shout is cut short as she stands perplexed. Kou has turned the tables on her. Or rather, since there were no tables to turn, he has lifted a cart instead. Kou warns the stunned Xingguai, "Lady, if I were you, I would duck." He lifts the cart high above his head. The Xingguai's jaw drops in disbelief as she mutters, "Impossible." The cart flies above the herd, just as Kou intended, and crashes down on her with brutal force, sending debris everywhere. She crawls from the rubble, coughing and in denial, desperately reaching for her whip to summon her minions once more. She shouts desperately, "Save your master!" But Kou lands on her with incredible force, bending the ground beneath her. His eyes shine with determination as he stands over her, stating he has figured out a way to make her lift the spell. He shoves something down her throat. The puzzled Xingguai demands to know what he did. Kou explains mockingly that it was the very xiaobing she made, which had fallen on the ground. He thought he should return it, since he sure didn't want it anymore. He suggests that this would probably be a good time for her to lift that spell. As she starts to transform, the now powerless villain tries to belittle Kou's victory. She claims he has doomed himself to an eternity of battling Xingguai and will never be able to live a normal human life again. Kou gives little importance to her claims, and she fully reverts to her original form. The townspeople return to normal, confused about what they are doing there. The girl shouts for her parents and rushes to them, noticing a wound on her father's stomach. Both parents feel sick and ache all over, having just turned back to normal. The girl is flooded with emotion as she embraces her long-missed parents. The girl's mother gasps at the sight of the father's wound, but he comforts them with a big smile. He jokes that it's just a flesh wound and he's lucky to have so much fat. The family's reunion is filled with concern and relief. Kou listens from a distance, a glad smile on his face as he observes their immense joy, his efforts having paid off. As Kou leaves, the girl surprises him by following him into an alley. She shouts for him to wait, tearfully thanking him for saving everyone and for giving her back her mom and dad. As he watches her return to her family, a wave of loneliness washes over him. He thinks to himself, I wonder if I'll get that too, one day. He thinks, one day. As he remembers Chiyou. He then expresses relief that everyone is back to normal. Chiyou, however, urges them to find her acquaintance fast, now that he should be human again. Suddenly, a small donkey appears out of nowhere, leaving Kou and Chiyou puzzled as they witness it transform. It transforms into a small, monkey-like creature that instantly jumps on Kou's head and starts sucking on his hair. Kou asks if this is Chiyou's friend, but she says no. The creature, named Niu, stops when it hears its master's voice from afar telling it to behave. Niu's master, Chiyou's acquaintance, approaches. He expresses his deep gratitude, apologizing for being foolish enough to eat the xiaobing. He then congratulates Chiyou, noting she no longer needs her mask. He declares himself deeply in their debt for saving his life and for the honor of beholding her true face. In return, he offers his services as the humble Baizé, to teach them about many Xingguai and where Chiyou might find the rest of her body.
Kou and Chiyou had found their target, Baizé, the one who knew where Chiyou's body was. Kou felt a mix of nerves and excitement as Baizé approached, all smiles, ecstatic to see Chiyou after so long, but Chiyou was not having it. She stomped his face the moment he got too close. Rejected, Baizé turned to Kou, questioning his own worth before deciding to examine the boy instead. He poked and prodded a very uncomfortable Kou, confused when he found no signs of possession, which could only mean one thing. Baizé saw the mark on Kou's hand, confirming his doubts. He looked at Chiyou and shouted in alarm, entrusting her very life to this young lad was not a decision to be made lightly. The word struck Kou hard, and he could only think about what that meant for her life. Then, Niu interrupted, complaining he was hungry. Baizé snapped back to his senses, apologizing for his rudeness, and invited them to a more fitting place. Without a word, Chiyou walked past a stunned Kou and followed. He led them to a restaurant he used to own, explaining he had hired help to run it. They sat down with drinks as Baizé mentioned that his staff was all at the doctor's, so they had the place to themselves. Inside, Baizé cheerfully introduced himself and the adorable Niu. Kou managed a nervous hello before trying to ask about the life and death matter, but Chiyou cut him off, demanding to know why Baizé had let himself be turned into a donkey. Baizé admitted he had been expecting their arrival. He explained he would never have eaten that cursed bun voluntarily and blamed the little glutton, Niu. Niu argued back, saying he told her it was okay, which Baizé strongly denied. He described arriving to find her on her fifth bun before she forced one into his mouth, pointing out her greasy face as proof. Kou could only look on, completely lost in the absurd argument. Kou finally spoke up, admitting he had been wondering what kind of person Chiyou would call a friend, and Baizé was taken aback by the word person, realizing she hadn't told him the truth. He clarified that Baizé wasn't his name, but his species, a Xingguai, a being of immense knowledge. A stunned Kou asked if he was really a Xingguai. Baizé quickly corrected him, explaining that unlike others of his kind, he didn't feed on humans, he lived on knowledge. Then, he revealed something shocking, he was ready to share the locations of Chiyou's body parts. Kou was stunned that it was really true. But first, Baizé said, he needed to be sure of one thing, did Kou truly understand the burden of the contract he had made? Then came the terrible truth, Madame Chiyou's life was now in Kou's hands. If Kou were to die, she would die with him. Kou was completely bewildered, his mind racing, what was he talking about? Baizé continued, explaining that Chiyou had been severely weakened by losing her body, and yet she had formed a contract to grant him her power, a reckless act that staked her survival on his. Now, Baizé explained, Kou was the only thing tethering her to existence, calling Chiyou capricious for not telling him this. And then, he added, there was more. The Xingguai standing beside Kou was once a being of immense power, a god of strife who started a war that shattered the world, a being heaven and earth once feared until she was finally slain. Now, most of her body was possessed by powerful Xingguai, far stronger than the one they had already faced, and that, Baizé said, was what he needed to ask Kou about. Baizé moved uncomfortably close, asking if Kou was prepared to fight endless battles for her, to never be allowed to retreat or die. He demanded to know if Kou would do all this for Chiyou's sake alone, questioning why she would stake her entire being on a frail human. Internally, Kou reeled. Chiyou, a god of war, had entrusted her life to him without his knowledge. He wondered if he was fit for such a responsibility, and why she would do it. Then, Chiyou spoke, saying the answer was obvious. She declared it was because he was a human worthy of such a purpose, that was precisely why she had selected him. Chiyou, looking uncharacteristically shy, stated that she had raised this human herself and assured Baizé that he was willing. Kou admitted it was a lot to process. He felt lucky that Chiyou took him in and granted him her powers, never knowing how legendary she truly was. But he affirmed that Chiyou had seen fit to entrust herself to him, so his greatest fear was failing to live up to her faith. He vowed to never give up, to bear the responsibility of both their lives, and to repay her for everything she had given him. Chiyou was touched, but Kou looked down at her, disappointed that she still should have told him what he was getting into. Chiyou shrank back, mumbling that the whole life and death responsibility thing was just too serious. Then, suddenly, Chiyou threw herself at Kou in a blushing, playful embrace, overwhelming him. She admitted that he was always so light-hearted that she didn't want to weigh him down with such a heavy burden. Kou, smiling now and relieved, agreed that it was a lot to bear, but said that was how it should be. Baizé laughed at their display of loyalty, something his kind would never understand, but deep down, he doubted the boy's bleak prospects, knowing he had no idea how powerful his enemies were. Annoyed by their continued affection, he shouted for them to stop, saying there were little ones watching. He then demanded they listen carefully. He told them he would reveal one of the Xingguai possessing a piece of Chiyou's body. It was a giant, man-eating tiger in an abandoned temple, extremely aggressive and having already consumed numerous humans. He gave Kou his mission, to destroy it and reclaim that part of Madame Chiyou. Internally, Kou realized he was about to learn the hard way what it truly meant to hold a piece of Chiyou's divine power. Kou observed Chiyou's continued high spirits. Now that they had a lead on her missing body parts, she happily declared that Baizé had finally been useful, even with his snooty attitude, and she thanked Kou for making it happen. Overwhelmed by gratitude, she wrapped him in a cheerful hug, calling him sweet. Her mood was so buoyant she announced she could just kiss him, forcing a flustered Kou to firmly tell her not to. As they walked, Kou asked which body part she was most excited to reclaim. Chiyou considered it, first stating the obvious importance of her hands and feet, but then she paused, a thoughtful look in her eyes as she remembered something more. She turned to Kou with a warm, loving smile and clarified that she was actually most excited to get her stomach back. She explained her reasoning, saying she longed to finally share a meal with him. Kou smiled back, wholeheartedly agreeing. Their conversation then turned to the mission as they continued toward the temple. Kou mentioned their target was the soul of a tiger Xingguai, admitting he'd never even seen a normal tiger. Chiyou's tone turned serious as she warned him of the beast's ferocity, stating that based on its victims it was extremely dangerous, but before she could finish her thought, her eyes snapped to something moving nearby, cutting her warning short. A severely injured man stumbled and collapsed right at their feet. Chiyou watched, silent and suspicious, while Kou immediately rushed to the man's side. The mangled victim, missing a finger and part of his scalp, begged for help, claiming a tiger Xingguai had attacked him and that survivors were still trapped. Kou urged the man to take it easy, astonished he could even walk in his condition. The man led them to a remote temple, a sight that baffled Kou, but as they entered, a foul smell hit him. His shock turned to horror as he discovered the source, a massive pile of half-disintegrated corpses. The gruesome scene was still registering when the temple door slammed shut behind them. Kou spun around, his shock turning to alarm as he realized they were trapped. His gaze snapped back to the injured man, whose posture had now become deeply unsettling and creepy. The man began to mutter a faint, broken apology. From the shadows, the tiger Xingguai appeared. He instantly twisted the puppet's head with a sickening crack, driving his claws into the man's eyes while whispering hollow comforts. The puppet gurgled in agony as the Xingguai hushed him before finishing the gruesome act, tearing the head completely from its body. The tiger Shingwai kicked the headless corpse aside and greeted his guests, calling it a lovely night for a decapitation. Kou stood rigid, on high alert. The monster mockingly scolded the severed head for its poor manners, and when the head managed a faint sound, he turned his attention to Chiyou. He told her she could call him Bing, feigning honor, then disrespectfully asked to shake her hand, making her recoil in anger. With a fake smile, he taunted her, remembering aloud that she couldn't, because he already had her hand. Bing triumphantly revealed Chiyou's mummified hand. The sight left both Kou and Chiyou stunned. In a flash, Kou lunged forward, but Bing effortlessly dodged the strike. As he leaped back, he gave a signal to his minions, and in response the entire pile of corpses began to stir and rise. The reanimated corpses stood up, their mouths now sporting monstrous tiger-like fangs. Kou stared in nervous shock as the scene transformed. Chiyou quickly explained these were Changgui, souls cursed to serve the tiger for eternity. As she spoke, the heads detached and began flying through the air, surrounding them in a terrifying vortex. The young warrior stood perplexed as the flying heads swarmed around him. Chiyou continued, detailing the victims' eternal slavery. Bing mocked their timing, saying he was bored of the prey his puppets brought, and declared that hunting a god was a true pleasure. The tiger Shingwai leaped forward, declaring the hunt begun. Kou deflected the attack with his sword. The villain smiled as his movements became untrackable. Kou realized his enemy was leaping off the flying heads, using them as platforms to move with impossible speed. Bing delivered a savage kick to the protagonist's face. Kou spat blood, reeling from the hardest hit of his life. The tiger Shingwai stood over him as he struggled to his knees. Bing mockingly showed him Chiyou's stolen hand, boasting that while he once only had her hand, now her face had been delivered to him. The monster began chewing on the mummified hand, fantasizing loudly about adding Chiyou's face to his collection. He desperately repeated that he wanted it, then mockingly asked Kou to give it to him. With grit and determination, Kou shouted that the only thing he would give him was death. Bing simply smiled and stepped onto a flying head, preparing to launch his final attack. The tiger Shingwai leaped into the air, ricocheting between the flying heads with blinding speed. Kou stood completely still, his eyes tracking the movement. Bing shot downward for the killing blow, but to his utter shock, his claws met only empty air. Kou was gone. Leaving only his sword and coat behind as a decoy, the young warrior erupted from beneath him, fist already clenched tight. He drove his punch directly into the tiger Shingwai's face. The impact was so immense it tore through the air, creating a shockwave that rippled outward like an explosion. Bing lay flattened on the ground, coughing and utterly defeated. Kou stood over him, clutching one of the monster's own teeth. He told Bing he could run his mouth all he wanted, but he would never treat Chiyou as property. He demanded the return of her stolen hand, calling the Shingwai a thieving cat.
The Shingwai's resilience was undeniable. Kou's hard punch did not stun him for long, and he quickly recovered, dodging Kou's next strike. Kou shouted that Chiyou's body did not belong to anyone but her and demanded it back. The Shingwai answered mockingly, laughing at the idea of giving such a treasure away. Bing slammed down with an axe kick. Kou struggled to block it, while Bing shouted viciously that nothing in the world was more sought after by their kind. He said that now that he had it, he had fallen completely under its spell. He stepped back, explaining that the ancient power within Chiyou's flesh was irresistible to the Shingwai, drawing them like flies. He added that maybe a taste of it would help Kou understand. Bing began chewing on Chiyou's stolen hand, claiming it was to show the true essence of her power. Kou watched in frustration and shock as Bing swallowed. In an instant, enormous energy rushed through the Shingwai. Kou covered his face from the intense heat. Bing emerged, his heads now on fire. The heads had been trouble from the beginning, and now they were worse. Our protagonist observed carefully as the tiger prepared to attack. Kou barely managed to deflect the projectile. He was scared stiff when he saw the trail the head had left. The power was so immense, he felt hopeless. Kou sensed death as he watched the Shingwai ignite the other heads. His thoughts raced. The Shingwai had set all those heads in flames. If he took a direct hit from one, it would be over. Things were not getting easier for Kou as he faced another projectile. The scene shifted to Baze, who was deep in thought. Nia was by his side as usual, playing with her cat. He explained to Nia that one must not think of Chiyou's body as mere flesh. Her physical form was what made her a god. The power within it was irresistible to the Xingwai, calling to those who sought conflict and letting them draw strength from her remains. Nia asked why they wanted that power so badly. She said she could not understand. Baze answered that throughout history, humanity had driven the Xingwai into the margins of the world. Some resented that and sought to overturn the present order. He continued, explaining that a group of powerful Xingwai wished to replace peace with tyranny and violence. He revealed that most of Chiyou's remains were now in their possession. That was why her body was so important. Curious, Nia interrupted and asked what would happen if they succeeded. Baze thought it over before answering that under normal circumstances, that would be how it all ends. The scene returned to Kou, who was surrounded by rubble and flames, struggling to stand. Chiyou, frustrated and fearful, remarked on the critical state Kou was in and urged him to retreat. She was interrupted by Bing, who shouted that it was too late for retreat. He stamped on Kou's hand and, tasting victory, began to disturbingly fantasize about how he would torture him before killing him. He talked about cracking his spine or devouring him piece by piece. He praised his luck, laughing like a maniac at the human who dared to step before him. He announced that this was his lucky day. He said Chiyou's hand alone held great power, and soon her face would be his as well. He spoke of a world ruled by the Xingwai and hinted that someone would be pleased by his success. Chiyou froze in shock as she realized who he meant. Suddenly, Kou gathered the strength to pick himself up, pushing Bing's foot away. He announced that he would not let these monsters take any more of Chiyou's body. Despite his beaten body, Kou's gaze remained menacing. He made it clear that no one would dare touch her again. The Xingwai Bing fell back under the pressure of Kou's unbroken will. Both of them charged. To Bing's utter shock, Kou shoved his own forearm into the Xingwai's mouth, forcing the beast backward. Kou, with every bit of energy he had left, gripped his sword. The Xingwai resisted, biting Kou's arm. Inside his mind, Kou reminded himself it was only her hand, not the stomach she wanted. But a hand mattered too. If they could reclaim it, she could ruffle his hair again when he did a good job. It was a comforting thought, and it was all the motivation he needed. Even if it cost him his arm, he would let that wish guide his blade. Kou aimed his sword, but Bing ridiculed his attempt, mocking humanity as clueless. He blocked the blade with his bare hand and punched Kou so hard the ground shattered. Consciousness faded from our boy's eyes. Chiyou immediately transformed. Fearful, she begged him to answer her, but he was completely out. Her frustration grew as her thoughts spiraled. She looked at him, the life gone from his eyes, and realized he could die. He would die if she did nothing. The idea of him dying echoed in her mind. If she did not act, both she and her dear Kou would meet their end. The scene cut to Baze, who told Nia that he was not concerned about Kou's fate, since the god of war herself was by his side. Chiyou turned. The frustration and fear on her face melted away, replaced by an unsettling blankness. Her human features dissolved. Her mouth and nose vanished, leaving only two black voids where her eyes once were. A new, distorted voice condemned the Xingwai's arrogance. She vowed to protect Kou and ensure his survival, declaring she would humiliate the fiends for all to see, no matter what it took. Bing stood frozen. A sharp sting erupted from his cheek as the cold steel of a blade sliced across it. He stumbled back, his eyes wide in disbelief. Chiyou's voice, flat and cold, echoed out. She declared that a beast like him had no right to harm what belonged to her. Fully possessing Kou's body, which now bore her heterochromatic eyes and a divine mark, Chiyou stood over the wounded Xingwai. Her gaze was piercing and merciless. She ordered him to grovel before her. She stated that if he did, she would grant him just enough time to beg for a mercy she would never give.